Okay, class, this is a really special lecture, and this is unusual. I included this several semesters ago, a couple of years ago, because of my work following Professor Joseph Campbell. I'm not sure how many of you have ever heard of Professor Campbell, but he is was a prolific author and a professor out in Southern Cal. And his investigation was into the human condition in a grand scale. He went around the world collecting myths and legends. Now, I understand this is probably a little bit strange to be including this in a motivation class, but bear with me because this really speaks to looking at the human condition from a self improvement perspective, as we've done in the second half of this semester, but with a very interesting spin. And I'm hoping that it will be able to if not answer, at least begin to address some questions you may be having with some of your athletes or some of the people you're going to be working with, your patients, your clients, and even more than that, and probably more important than that, the person in the mirror, the struggles that you have within yourself, and the reasons that you either do or do not do things. And I hope you find this interesting. It's a little lengthy, but I've mercifully divided it up into three parts here so you can do the first part and then engage in the second and finally the third. But I do suggest you get into all three because it's really a pretty fascinating journey. It's called the hero's journey, the hero with a thousand faces. Joseph Campbell was a prolific author, but the hero with a thousand faces is his magnum opus. That was the book that really took everything that he had found, and it's a fascinating piece of research worldwide, all eras from ancient myths and legends through all cultures, all religions, everything. And what he did was he found some commonalities. It was almost surprising that a lot of the different cultures, many different cultures, had elements, they had legends and myths that held the same elements. It was always a journey, and it was always the hero's journey. Sometimes the hero would be somebody quite uh, not quite what someone would call a hero, but say the lesser known individual who has strength of character, who's able to carry this through. So I'll just continue to editorialize as we go through, but I hope that this makes sense to you. So welcome to the collected works of Professor Joseph Campbell. All right, well, the journey. The journey is common to all cultures and all eras. He found that there were commonalities, that there was always a central character, there were allies, there were challenges, there were trials, there were tribulations, there were setbacks, uh, there were cathartic moments where they had this revelation, they gained something of value, and then they returned home, ultimately a different individual. Um, I find it interesting that he says that it contains elements from Maslow, Abraham Maslow's pyramid. I'm sure everybody's familiar with that from basic psychology. Remember, at the very, very bottom is survival, and then there's the sociological and some of the other things that go along, and all the way up to very pinnacle of the pyramid, the very top of the pyramid is the concept of self-actualization, and that's different for all people, for all individuals, but each of us has our ultimate and penultimate goals in life. Well, once again, the traits and the stages are universal. They are contained in every one of the myths, and that's the fascinating part about it, because you can find elements and trace the elements of every story. And frankly, if you go into most of the fairy tales that you've read, most of the Hollywood movies, most of the adventure books that you know about, they all have these elements, the traits and the stages. So we'll just kind of go through all of this. There's dangers involved with this, and I'm putting dangers in quotes here because failure to make the journey may occur at any stage. In other words, this is a very fragile type of a journey, and it's only the most committed and the most courageous individuals that actually make it through. Failure is very, very, very easy to get off base, to get sidetracked, to get mired down, to get into the weeds, and to find yourself right back where you started. Although you're not back where you started, you're actually further behind because you tried and you quote failed unquote, and so therefore your spirit is perhaps a little bit diminished as a consequence. Joseph Campbell makes the caution. He says, this is not difficult. Well, it's not necessarily difficult. It is profoundly difficult because it requires so much courage and so much intestinal fortitude and dedication and commitment and discipline to make the change and to follow the call and to go through these stages. So he says it's not difficult, just different, but it will test you. And you see, there is where most people fail because it will test you, and most people are not up to the challenge. And I don't mean that they're incapable. More often than not, they are unwilling, and there's a different type of a discussion to be had in that regard. So it often begins when your quote comfort zone is no longer comfortable, and we need to make the distinction here between a comfort zone and the ordinary world. It's I think that it's easy to get confused between the two of these. Sometimes your comfort zone is comfortable, but it's not beneficial. Sometimes the ordinary world is not comfortable, but at least it's known and it's ordinary and it's familiar. See, so all of these words fit in. Comfort zone, I like to reserve for a very special place or a very special individual that provides sanctuary to which you can retreat to and launch away from, and always retreat to recharge your batteries and relaunch. But Professor Campbell says it often begins when your comfort zone is no longer comfortable. When you begin to realize that what you've got is insufficient and you firmly convinced that you could be capable of more. And I'm hoping this is resonating with you on a very visceral level right now. He goes on to say that having, quote, just enough, unquote, is debilitating, discouraging, and dispiriting. And it is, when you think about that. If you have just enough, it's just enough to take the wind out of your sails. It's just enough to take the edge off of your anxiety and off of your willingness to charge forward. No, having just enough will have you want to get off the couch, but, come on, what's the big deal? I mean, I got enough. It's no problem. Consider this. If you had plenty, you wouldn't be having the discussion. However, by the same token, very sharp two-edged sword, if you did not have enough, you would do whatever it took to get enough. So it's that pendulum to where we're talking about, and let me talk to you as physiologists here, we always talk in physiology in terms of threshold. If the threshold is right on the precipice, if you're right on the cusp, if you're right between a graded potential and you want to make it an action potential, there needs to be something else happen, and it needs to have something additional before action. And there is this call to action. So having just enough, always remember that in the human condition, it's a tremendously dispiriting and discouraging place to be, is to have just enough. Yes, you're getting by, but you're not getting on, and you're not getting forward. So the rest of this journey, the entire journey, everything that we're going to be talking about from this point on requires courage, commitment, and persistence. And there's a whole litany of words that go along with this. I mean, there's character and persistence, or perseverance, and discipline, and all the rest of those words that we'd kind of like to think that we have, but I don't know. In the cold night, we might have to realize or admit to ourselves that we could do a little bit better job of that. Well, let's have a little look at the hero's journey. I've got a diagram here, just a rudimentary diagram. Let's not get into it in too much detail right now. Back up with me and just take a look. Right at the very top is the known world. That's where you are right now. 2/3 of it, or 3/4 of it, is the unknown, and this is the hero's journey right here. And this little man up at the very 12 o'clock position, that's you. There you are. You will receive the call to adventure, and there will be some aids, some maybe natural, maybe supernatural, and then the thresholds and the guardian, and then the threshold between the known world and the unknown world. And this is where, although the failure can take place at any time, this is where most failure takes place. Matter of fact, the second most common place is failure to answer the call to adventure. So the thing never even gets off the ground right out of the gate. Anyway, we'll come back to this, but then there's the threshold, the beginning of transformation. You find allies and helpers and sidekicks and things like this. Along the way here, the challenges and temptations, you come across a mentor, someone, something that can act as a guide. And I'm going to give you some examples of this just to go ahead and flesh this out and give you some firm exemplars that upon which you can hang your hat. And then there's the abyss, the revelation. This is the death, and put that in quotes, and rebirth. In other words, the person you were before no longer exists because of what you've seen, what you've done, what you've experienced. There's an old expression that says you can't go back, and there's a lot of wisdom to that. You can never go back because you don't exist. That you that used to fit in that ordinary world doesn't exist anymore. And the place in which you fit no longer exists because everybody else has moved on as well and filled the vacuum and filled the void. And then, of course, the transformation, atonement, we're going to get into all of this too. And then there's the gift of the goddess and return. And then you return to your known world, but you return with this knowledge, with this gift, with this understanding, with this wisdom, if you will, this something that you have earned along this hero's journey. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the separation from the ordinary world. Now, let's just talk briefly about Star Wars and the Matrix, about these first few stages here. Over here on the far left, you see Campbell, then the Star Wars, and then the Matrix. The initial call to adventure, and I'm sure that you've seen these films. Princess Leia's message, remember, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're our only hope. Boom. And then in the Matrix, we're following the White Rabbit, where Neo either does or does not. That was the call to adventure. You either engage in this, you get up out of your ordinary world, or you do not. Well, there is the refusal of the call. Remember, that's when Obi-Wan said to Luke, said, "You must come with me to Alderaan." And he said, "Nah, I've got to help with the harvest, and Uncle Owen needs me." And remember in the Matrix where Neo wouldn't climb out onto the window. He didn't trust it. He didn't, no, that's too much. It's too much for me to believe and too much for me to do. Besides, what was being asked of him was pretty extraordinary. And then the supernatural aid where Obi-Wan rescues Luke from the Sand People. He just comes out of nowhere. Here he is. We're kind of jumping the shark here a little bit because ultimately Obi-Wan becomes the mentor. That's in future. We're going to see that in a little bit. But then in the Matrix is where Trinity extracts the bug from Neo's belly button, from his navel. Remember, that's the tracker. That's the thing that kept him in the Matrix. And then crossing the first threshold is when he escapes Tatooine. It's the first time when he takes off, first time he's ever been off the planet. And then in the Matrix, of course, is Neo's taken out of the Matrix for the first time. Remember the red pill and the blue pill. And the belly of the whale is just kind of a figure of speech here. The trash compactor scene in Star Wars. What a delightful smell you've discovered. And then the torture room in the Matrix. So this is just to give you a little bit of something to hang on to when you're trying to figure out what the dickens are we talking about with the call to adventure or supernatural aid. These will give you something that you can fall back on. So let's talk about this ordinary world in which we all exist. Well, the ordinary world is boring and it's mundane. It's just an existence, and we all begin here. We all live in it. Some of us are perfectly content to do so, and others always have this need to move on, always have this need to explore something and do something and to push the envelope, I guess is the word as we used to use in the service. But it is a boring and mundane existence. Why? Because nobody is extraordinary. Everybody's kind of just doing their own thing, and you meet up with your friends and, hey, how you doing? Same old stuff, that kind of a thing. And I don't need to go into it too much. I think you're already you already understand what I mean. You've probably been having pangs of this during these times of social isolation, et cetera. You're spending a great deal of time with yourself, so I'm imagining that you're getting into a little bit of introspection, and I'm hoping you're using your journal, pardon me, to document the journey and your various feelings and changes in thoughts and attitudes and perspective, et cetera. Well, Dr. Campbell says it doesn't always have to be like this. The ordinary world is ordinary because you haven't gotten out of it. You haven't done anything to remove yourself from it. Now, this is relative. Right now, each of you is engaged in a process of obtaining a 4-year degree. Admirable, laudable, great. That's one way of doing it. In a manner of speaking, you are on a particular path, but not when you consider that your ordinary world also includes 2,500 other of your peers that are doing the same thing. See, so your ordinary world is very different from the ordinary world of people that are sitting around working maybe 9 to 5 and or doing whatever they have to do, maybe working 2, 3 jobs, that kind of thing. They're not on that path, and they're fine. They're just kind of getting by, and they're floating through life. Um, the ordinary world, it marks the sharpest contrast to the special world the hero will eventually end up in. And what is that? Well, something. Let's see. What is the ordinary world? It's Luke Skywalker's farm. How's that? How about Wizard of Oz? Wizard of Oz, great example. Dorothy's farm back in Kansas. We ain't in Kansas anymore. How about your desk, the one you're sitting at right now? Your basement, your dead end job, your bedroom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever it is, it's your ordinary. It's your ordinary world, and welcome to it. Well, couple of things to be said about the ordinary world. It's all too well known. You know it so well. It's so predictable. You could go through it with your eyes closed. Everything is just so laid out. And if it's Monday, it's this. And if it's Tuesday, it's that. And frankly, when we've been doing social isolation, it doesn't matter what kind of a day it is, because on Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Thursday, Saturday, it doesn't matter. They're all the same. It's just one day after another. And we've been doing this for quite some time now. Well, it is all too well known, but here he makes the distinction. It is not your comfort zone, but it is very familiar. And be careful about familiar. It is ordinary and it is familiar, but that makes it, again, I'm trying to dance around using the word comfortable. It's not comfortable, it's just known. And people stay in dead end jobs and dead end relationships because they're known, because the unknown is an innate fear that humans have. We don't necessarily embrace, not everybody. Some of us do. Some of us go out of our way to be adventurous and explore strange new worlds, but not everybody. So it's familiar, but it's not your comfort zone, not necessarily. He says, don't confuse this with sanctuary. And that's true, because you're not recharging your batteries here. You're not gaining strength. You're just existing. It's a maintenance bay. If you want to look at that, you're maintaining. You're not getting anywhere. You're just maintaining, and gives you perhaps the illusion that you're doing something productive when in fact, yeah, you know. Well, he goes on to say you want to leave, but you just don't know how. And this, I think, is a salient point. I think a lot of people have pangs that they just want to, and the pangs are brought about by a number of different things. Perhaps you see something on TV, you see an adventure, you see a vacation spot, or perhaps you're haunted by the past, that him or her that got away, or that opportunity that you squandered, or this other path that you really are thinking about now, and perhaps that might still be a path of exploration, or it may not. But recognition starts the process of considering change. So you see, it's just that planting that little seed, and sometimes that seed, sometimes it just dies, and then other times it germinates and it begins to grow and gains power. So stepping out can be scary because you're entering the unknown. Remember that diagram back there? That thing was two-thirds, if not three-quarters, unknown. And I love the way that it's put because the known world is just this little tiny ice cap right at the top, and yet we think that we're very worldly and yeah, we know it all. And I think all of us can recall back when we were 13 and we all knew everything. But here it is: stepping out can be scary because it's unknown, but staying in can become even scarier. And the longer that this happens, and the metaphor that I always use with my patients and my students here, you probably heard me say this before, this is the sort of thing that will keep you up looking at the ceiling fan at 3 in the morning. These are the thoughts that you have while you're sitting there wide awake and haunted by what the hell am I doing? And what the hell am I not doing? And why am I not doing it? So, the ordinary world is a reflection of the monomyth. And this is just an aside here. Bear with me on this. Professor Campbell, that's what he called the summation and all of the phases and all the stages that he's talking about on the hero's journey. He calls it the monomyth because it was one myth that incorporates all of these stages and all of these phases and all of these things that are they're common thematics to every one of the myths and legends that he encountered. So that's the term. If you hear the word monomyth, that comes from Dr. Campbell, from Professor Campbell. Um, he says, and I quote, "We fail to realize that we are the hero and that our life should be a tale worth telling." Now, that's interesting because we'd like to think that heroes are extraordinary individuals, when in fact, heroes are simply the ones who hear the call to adventure and hear it and do something about it. Um, and I hate to distill things down to that, but in many cases, that's all that it takes to get started because you don't know the potential. You have no earthly idea. You have no frame of reference because you've been living in the ice cap up here at the very top. The rest of the world out here is this thing that, and here we get into a little bit of interpretation. I don't know. How do you see the rest of the world? Is it something scary and frightful and dangerous and foreboding and fraught with threats to your physical and mental health? Or is it something exciting and adventurous and wondrous and inviting exploration and adventure? And again, it gets into optimism and pessimism and a lot of other different things here. But you can go ahead and do a little bit of introspection in your journal and try to figure this out. But he says we fail to realize that we are the hero, every single one of us, should we hear the call and decide to do something about it. Next thing he says, and this is kind of a parting shot before we get into some of the other stuff, he says, but the first, you need to believe that you can change your life. See, both of us go through and we think that we're on this like a train, a trolley on tracks, and we're going in one direction and you can't veer off. There's no turns, there's no stops, there's no nothing. We simply just go and we're set and it's all predetermined. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. I suppose it is if that's what you've convinced yourself, and that's what gives you comfort as you're sitting on the couch watching Gilligan reruns, but it doesn't have to be that way. So, this is the call to adventure, the first step on the journey to a larger world. And it's not just a larger world, it's the larger world. It's there is just so much out there. And I've been very, very blessed in my upbringing. I was an Air Force brat, and I went to 10 schools in 12 years. People say, "Where'd you go to high school?" Which one? I went to 4 of them. So I've went all over the world. I've done a lot of stuff, and I'm not saying that for any other reason that it just provides me with a little bit more of a frame of reference as to what's out there. And it allows me to make a more rational, valid, and reliable value judgment as to the meaning of what's out there. Anyway, this call to adventure, the professor says the most important sound you can hear. The most important sound you can hear. It'll change your life. Absolutely. without question, it will change your life. Now, again, are you seeing the sharp two-edged sword? Some people welcome that. They say, "Yeah, man, I need a change. My life sucks. I'm capable of so much more." Others say, "Wait a minute. No, no, no. Careful what you wish for, because, I'm I've got just enough." And it just depends upon you. You've got to wrestle with this yourself. That's why I get back to saying a hero's adventure. Most of this journey here is an internal journey, and the greatest struggles that you're going to have are the struggles that you have within yourself. The stuff you see on the outside, struggles against other people, struggles against the environment, those are minute stakes compared to the struggles you have against yourself. And they will, and here's something else that's somewhat, I don't know, not dispiriting, but it is a statement of fact. They're relentless. They continue. They continue. Even when you think you got it all nailed down, something's going to change, and you're going to have to do it again and again and again. So that's gets back to my initial United States Marine Corps: improvise, adapt, and overcome. You got to have those qualities if you want to do this, and if this has any meaning to you. You see, that's another part of this, the call to adventure. If everything that I've said to thus far in this particular lecture doesn't resonate with you, then really nothing else I can say is going to make any difference. If it does resonate you, well, by the same token, nothing else I need to say is going to stop you. So, he says it's the most important sound you can hear. It may be loud, it may be soft, it may be obvious or not, and it may easily be missed. There's something else you need to know. Your call to adventure may come in several times. You may not see it the first time. You may not understand it the second time. You may not have heard it the first or second or third or fifth time. But eventually, it may be easily missed. So what do I always tell you? Remember the two words that I said when we began this whole class. Pay attention. I told you that's the key to this entire motivation class. And it's really the keys to the kingdom as far as I'm concerned, paying attention. Situational awareness. So that it may be loud, soft, obvious, or not, and it may easily be missed. But the call to adventure is insistent, and it will grab you when you cannot bear the thought of not taking the step. And once that happens, when you finally, kind of like on December 31st, there New Year's, where you're waiting, and then may old acquaintance be forgotten, and okay, all right, no more Mr. Nice Guy, everything changes from this point on. Well, it's an ideal time to do that, but it may not be the proper timing. I'm just saying, put you in that mindset so that you can kind of get into that. Yeah, okay, because once you make a decision, it is a decision. It's not a choice. At that point, it becomes a decision, and the decision requires action. Okay, a little bit more about the call to adventure. There's no turning back if you want to be successful. No. You're on the path now, kiddo. Let's see what you've got, and let's see what the world has to offer, and let's see what you need to do, and let's see where these paths take you. Most people do not hear the call, and they never realize what is at stake. And that's tragic to me. That's tragic to me. It's as tragic to me as when I talk to one of my friends, and so I say, what's going on? Well, same old stuff. Not much. Not much. Oh my God! Please, please. My wife and I have adventures grocery shopping, for God's sake. We try to make everything an adventure, but that's just us. Anyway. Dr. Campbell, he says, you make room for learning what is right by purging what is wrong. And here this requires a little explanation. This journey is going to require you to get very introspective and question everything that you just believe to be correct and true. In other words, as I've always told you, I'm trying to get you to resist the temptation when something is explained to you and you shrug your shoulders and go, oh, okay, and you just go along with it. No. Question things. Understand it. Ask questions. Don't just march over the cliff in lockstep with everybody else and be proud of your individuality. You're not. You're a lemming at that point. Question it all, especially what's being told to us today. Just question things. Get your mindset. and understand reasons behind things. So you make room for learning what is right by purging what is wrong. And it's going to be a tough one there because that's going to be an ongoing process. That's never going to change. It's never going to change. I'm hoping that you can relate to this because just by being at the university, most of the things that you held to be true, and most of your morals, your ethics, your judgment, your belief systems, your sense of right and wrong, and your behaviors, that all got called into question at one time or another. It's all been called into question. And you have had to weigh and balance and make a decision about which path you're going to take. So this is nothing new. I'm hoping that this is resonating with you on a very, once again, a very visceral level. Yeah, and it's not your workout routine or your diet or a new diet or supplement or something like this. No, 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 no. That's window dressing. We're talking about your beliefs and your behaviors. That's really where he's going with this. It is adopting an attitude of challenging and rejecting what the vast majority of people unquestionably believe is true. And that's going to be a tough pill to swallow because you're going to have to, if you want to follow this and if you really are serious about this, you're going to have to question some things and it's going to be uncomfortable. And I don't want you to get discouraged and get frustrated. This is not something that you sit down 1/2 hour. You sit down with a glass of wine and you go, okay, I'm going to figure out life 101 and then do it in 30 minutes. It's no. You're going to be doing this for the rest of your days. Believe me, I'm 66 and I can tell you that I'm still doing it. So it is adopting an attitude of challenging and rejecting what the vast majority of people unquestionably believe it to be true. Now, if after your analysis and your questioning, you find out it to be true, what they're saying, okay, then that's fine. But at least you've gone through the process. Remember, this is not necessarily difficult, it's just different. And resist the temptation to get frustrated and say, this is all BS and just throw in the towel. It's all too easy to do that. When you're tempted to do that, remember what I told you back with Dr. Orlick and with Bob Parsons, and with George Leonard as well, said when you are confronted with trying to get to the bottom line, when someone's trying to explain something to you and you go, wait, look, just give me the bottom line. Resist that temptation. This is the same thing, exactly the same thing. Smile at yourself, catch yourself when you're getting ready to throw in the proverbial towel and say, this is all bullshit. No, don't. Stop, catch yourself, take another deep breath and get back at it. Oh, guys. Ooh, this is a bad one right here because this is the refusal of the call. And you know what? According to Dr. Campbell, Professor Campbell, and I agree with him, you at age 18, 19, 20 and change, you have heard the call. You've had the call to adventure several times, and you have refused it. You may have gone into it half-heartedly, but you are still in the ice cap. But that's okay. That's okay because practice makes perfect, and you're probably not going to do it the first time. Remember what Bob Parsons said. He said, just because what you're doing isn't working doesn't mean it won't work. It just means the way you're doing it isn't working. So, refusal to call, a lot of reasons for this. I mean, sometimes it's just basic misinformation, rumors about what they say. BBD is the bigger, better deal. It's all infomercial stuff, silver bullets, quick fixes, that sort of thing. That's all. We really haven't gotten into Master Musashi. I don't know whether I have time this semester, but Master Musashi in the Book of Five Rings, he talks about practice is the shortcut. I always love that because you like it because we're always consumed with trying to find a way around practice. Is there any way I can just go ahead and shorten this up? Is there a quick fix? Can I just, shoot this in my backside, or can I take this supplement? No. Because the refusal of the call is seeking one of these ways, and the refusal of the call is you're not willing to do the work, and you're not willing to embrace the journey. Sometimes it's just a lack of focus. Uh, he also makes mention of some of the most powerful things to get you off track. Marketing phrases usually say it, and I know this because I use it in my Muscle Media magazine as editor in chief. I use a lot of titles like "The Secret About" or "The Top 10 Secret" or "The Truth About Creating." No, when you get into it, there is no secret. It's hiding in plain sight, and there is no truth. It's nothing. It's just to get you in. It's kind of get you fished in. But you see, in doing that, you've gone off the path, and you're really not paying attention. Now you're following somebody else's rabbit hole. So, well, refusal to call. Yeah, when the hero is confronted by the reality of the adventure itself is going to be a process, and you will be challenged. Now, to some of you, that's going to be you accept the challenge. You've just been slapped with a gauntlet. You're picking that gauntlet up and you're slapping back. The rest of you, perhaps you're ambivalent. Or maybe you're saying, man, wait. I'm fine just where I am. Thanks very much. Well, that's entirely up to you. My job here is just to illustrate it to you so that you can explain it to yourself. Let's see a little bit more on the refusal. Refusal to call is normal and very common. Yes. I reflect back on my life and I think about the times when I have not answered the call and I've refused the call. I can think of several times right out of the gate. Of course, I've had a lot of time to think about it too, but here I am. I still find myself in this position. So, I'm on a journey. I'm on my own adventure, if you will. The refusal of the call is normal and very common, but it doesn't get you out of the ordinary world. You still wake up with an empty bag of Doritos and another Gilligan rerun. So, welcome to the ordinary world. Um, However, there are some other things to be considered here. Refusal may come from a sense of obligation, some fear, duty to loved ones. Like Luke said, I got to help with the harvest. I've got responsibilities here. My dad's sick, and da 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 da. Okay, but remember that the call is still there. So when you can come to grips and when you can reconcile your obligations, your fears, or your duty to your loved ones with the call, then you stand the greatest chance of being able to get out of your common world, the ordinary world. Refusing usually stems from a sense of inadequacy as well. It's anxiety and doubts about being able to complete the journey, and that usually brings refusal. And well, it should, I suppose, if you don't think you're worthy, if you don't think you're capable. But again, I'm talking to you guys. I'm talking to kinesiologists. I'm talking to athletes. If you're an athlete, you don't believe you can't. You at least want to give it a shot. You at least want to give it a go. You're not going to sit there. You're not content to sit under a blanket in a dark room with no friends. Okay? No, you're going to take that gauntlet. And you're going to smack back. So that's the refusal of the call. Remember, this is very fragile, and this can happen at any time. And then there's the meeting of the mentor, and this can take any number of different forms. It's interesting. I've had several mentors in my life that have come through my life, and I regard them all with tremendous fondness and respect because they've all given me something and illustrated something to me, and I believe, become a better person as a consequence. But the mentor provides the source of necessary guidance. Uh, you're going to need some guidance. You can need some help with this because if you just go off half cocked and you go off willy nilly, then you don't have any real purpose. Your energy can rapidly be depleted because you're going in too many directions at once, and there needs to be a sense of order and a sense of purpose behind all of this. Now, the source of necessary guidance, it may be an object of great importance. Some of the tales, some of the myths, it's a sword or the Holy Grail or the Golden Fleece or any number of different things. The Force itself. It can give insight into the dilemmas that you face. Maybe something that's going to cause you to get introspective and really confront some of your inner demons or your inner angels too. Could just be wise advice, some practical training, or it may be something that leads to maybe a combination of any of these, and these are representative, they're not exhaustive, it could be anything beyond that, but it will help to provide the self-confidence necessary so that you can continue the journey. Remember, this is only the first step. We haven't even gotten out of the polar ice cap yet. So stand by, guys. That's the end of part one. So stick around. We're going to get into part two and see where that one takes us. Okay.